My wife cheated on me with her boss, secretly drained our account of $300, $0 to fund their affair, and now she's claiming half of our $1.2 million house in a nasty legal battle I never saw coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be nothing but a lying, cheating bitch. Honestly, the whole thing felt like a punch to the gut, like I'd been punched so hard I couldn't breathe. But I guess I should start from the beginning, give you some context. We'd been married for about 8 years, high school sweethearts turned adults, and I thought I knew everything about her. Turns out I knew nothing. Always had this way of acting like she was the queen bee. She was beautiful, yes, but she also had a sharp tongue and a way of making you feel small if you didn't keep up. We had a pretty decent life, big house in the suburbs, 2 cars, good jobs, and a nice savings account. I worked as an accountant and she was a marketing executive. Things weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. That's what made the shock so profound. The first signs I ignored, little things. She'd start working late more often, claiming she had big projects, but I'd catch her texting someone or ignoring my calls. She'd get defensive if I asked, say I was paranoid or insecure. I believed her because she'd always been good at lying. But then I started noticing money going missing from our joint account, small at first, a few hundred here and there, then bigger sums. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just spending more than she admitted, or I was being paranoid. But I was wrong, dead wrong. One night I decided to check our bank statement more carefully. Something didn't sit right. I saw a huge withdrawal, 50 going to some offshore account I'd never heard of. That's when my stomach clenched. I pulled up the details, and to my shock it was labeled investment fund. But I knew had no interest in investments. She was terrible with money. I dug deeper, and that's when I saw the transaction details. It was drained from our account over the last few months, supposedly for business expenses. But I knew better. That's when I started to suspect something was seriously wrong. I started snooping around her phone, her emails, everything. It didn't take long to find what I was dreading: messages from her boss, Jason, on her email. Flirty, suggestive messages. Photos of her in bed with him, half naked, saying how much she liked the way he touched her. I couldn't believe my eyes. I felt sick. I'd always known she was a little bitchy, but this was beyond betrayal. She was sleeping with her boss, draining our account to fund her affair, and lying straight to my face about everything. I confronted her the next day. I laid it all out, showed her the bank statements, the messages, the photos. Her face twisted into this ugly sneer as she tried to deny everything. "You're crazy," she spat, her voice sharp. "You're just jealous, insecure, and paranoid. Jason's just a friend. I don't know what you're talking about with the money. You're making this up because you're insecure." She looked me in the eye and lied so convincingly I almost believed her. Almost, but I knew better. I could see the panic in her eyes, the way her hands trembled. She was caught, and she knew it. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she drain our savings, destroy what we built just to sleep with some guy who probably saw her as a trophy? I'd never felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her. I thought we had a good life, that she loved me. Turns out she only loved her own lies and her secret affairs. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything: the way she lied, the money she stole, the way she looked when she was caught. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest repeatedly. I was furious, but also crushed. I began to realize that my marriage was over, or at least that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I started planning what I'd do next. I knew I had to be smart because was a master manipulator. She'd spin stories, try to turn things around, make me look like the bad guy. I had to be careful. I decided I'd gather all the evidence, get a good lawyer, and prepare for the worst. I knew she'd try to fight me over the house, claiming she deserved half because she was my wife, even though she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I also knew that the money she drained from us was just the tip of the iceberg. There was more: hidden accounts, secret plans. I didn't trust her anymore, and I knew I'd have to fight to keep what was mine. That's where I am now, sitting here, writing this out because I need to get it off my chest. I never thought my life would turn into this nightmare, but here I am, betrayed, angry, and trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. I don't know what's coming next, but I do know this: I'll never trust her again, and I'll make sure she pays for what she's done. After I uncovered everything, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. It was surreal, like I was watching a bad movie unfold in slow motion. I couldn't believe the woman I loved had been lying to me for so long, draining our savings, sleeping with her boss, and then having the nerve to deny it all. The initial shock turned into pure rage. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I knew better. I had to stay calm, collect my thoughts, and plan my next move carefully. I spent the next few days gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I printed out the bank statements showing the suspicious transactions, saved the emails and messages from her phone, and even hired a private investigator to dig into her finances further. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into various accounts, probably to hide her tracks. She thought she was clever, but I was going to make sure I had everything I needed to win this fight. I wasn't going down without a fight. The hardest part was confronting her again. I remember calling her into the living room, my hands trembling as I laid the proof on the table, her face twisted in anger and defiance. She tried to deny everything, claiming the bank statements were fake, that I was paranoid, and that Jason was just a friend. That's when I lost it. I told her I knew about her affair, the money she stole, everything. She scoffed and said I was overreacting, that I was just jealous and insecure. But I saw her eyes, the way she looked away, the way her voice cracked, that told me she was lying. Her reaction only made me angrier. I knew she was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt myself, but I refused to be manipulated anymore. I told her if she wanted to lie, fine, but I was done trusting her. I told her I was filing for divorce, that I'd get a lawyer, and that our house, was in my name. She scoffed again, acting like she had some right to half of everything just because she was my wife. That's when I realized how deep her sense of entitlement ran, even after everything she'd done. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed on every level, heartbroken, humiliated, furious. I kept replaying her words, her lies, the way she looked at me with that bitchy smirk. I'd never felt so stupid for trusting someone. How could I have missed all the signs? How could I have been so blind? I thought I knew her, but I was just fooling myself. She was playing me the whole time, and I was too naive to see it. In the days that followed, I started to feel the weight of everything crashing down. I'd lost my wife, my trust, and a significant chunk of our savings. I felt like I was drowning, but I knew I had to keep my head straight. I contacted a lawyer, one who specialized in divorce and financial disputes. I wanted to protect what was mine. I also hired a forensic accountant to track the money she drained, to see if I could recover some of it. I knew she'd try to spin her lies, try to make herself the victim, but I had evidence, and I was going to use it. Meanwhile, was still acting entitled. She kept throwing tantrums, claiming she was entitled to half the house because she was my wife. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying she deserved a share because she'd sacrificed so much. I couldn't believe her audacity. She drained our accounts, slept with her boss, lied to my face, and now she thought she could just waltz away with half of everything. I told her she was delusional. I told her she'd have to fight me in court, and I was ready for that fight. The legal battle started sooner than I expected. She hired her own lawyer, and I could tell she was trying to play the victim, acting like I was the one who betrayed her, but I had the evidence. I had everything. I was prepared to fight her for this house, for the money she stole, and for my dignity. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. This wasn't just about money or the house. It was about standing up for myself after being betrayed so badly. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally taking control, and anger that I had to go through this at all. I never imagined my life would turn into a legal nightmare because of a woman I once loved. But I also knew that I was done being the victim. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I was going to make her pay for the pain she caused. All I could do now was wait and prepare myself for what was coming. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined to see it through. I'd been betrayed, drained, and humiliated, but I was also determined to come out on top. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. Not without a fight. The court dates came faster than I expected, and honestly, I felt like I was walking into a war zone. His lawyer was sharp, manipulative, and clearly knew how to spin her lies. She was trying to claim that was an innocent victim, trying to convince the court that all the money she drained from our account was for legitimate expenses, that her affair with Jason was just a mistake, and that she deserved half the house because she'd contributed to the marriage. I could see right through her bullshit, but I had to stay calm and present my case with facts. I brought in every piece of evidence I had: bank statements, emails, text messages, and even the private investigator's report. My lawyer hammered her with questions about the offshore accounts, the suspicious transactions, and the affair. Sat there, her face tight with anger, trying to act like she was the innocent victim, but I could see her eyes flickering. She was scared. She knew she was caught and her whole strategy was falling apart. The judge listened carefully, asking pointed questions about our finances, the nature of her relationship with Jason, and the amount of money she'd stolen. I felt a surge of relief when the forensic accountant that she drained over $300, $0 from our account, money that was supposed to go toward our future, our children, our retirement. That was a blow to her credibility. She tried to deny it, but her own emails and texts proved otherwise. Meanwhile, kept up her act, crying fake tears, claiming she was sorry and regretful, but I wasn't buying it. Her words were hollow, her tears fake, and her excuses even more pathetic. She claimed she loved Jason, that it was just sex, and that she'd never meant to hurt me. Yeah, right, she was trying to play the victim, but I knew better. She was a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. The most shocking moment came when her lawyer tried to argue that deserved half of the house because she contributed to the marriage. I had to fight back the urge to scream. I knew the house was in my name and I had the receipts to prove it. I told the court that she had no legal claim to the property, especially considering her betrayal and the financial damage she caused. It was a tense moment, but I felt confident I was making my case. Throughout the hearing, I felt a strange mixture of anger and vindication. I was finally standing up for myself after being by her lies. I realized that she had been playing me for years, making me think I was paranoid, gaslighting me, all while she was secretly screwing her boss and draining our savings. I kept thinking about the house, the money, everything she'd stolen. I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. When the judge finally made the ruling, I felt a small sense of relief. The court confirmed that had no claim to the house and that she was responsible for paying back the stolen money, plus damages. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a start. I knew this wasn't over yet. There would be more battles, more lies to expose. But for now, I felt like I had won a small victory. After the court session, I sat in my car, exhausted but relieved. I looked at the documents, the court papers, and realized how much I'd been through. It hit me hard. This was the end of a chapter, but also the beginning of a new one. I was free from her lies, free from her manipulation, and I was going to rebuild my life. I knew she'd try to fight me on the financial side, but I was ready. I had evidence, I had support, and most importantly, I had clarity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything: how I'd trusted her, how she'd betrayed me, and how I'd come out the other side. I didn't feel victorious exactly, but I felt like I'd taken back some control. I'd been yes, but I wouldn't let her destroy me. I'd learn from this, move forward, and make sure that I never let anyone do this to me again. The betrayal cut deep, but I was determined not to let it define me. I was done with her lies, her manipulations, and her games. Now it was time to rebuild and move on, stronger than ever. The aftermath hit me harder than I expected. After the court's decision, I thought I'd feel some relief, maybe even a sense of closure, but instead I was just exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally. The house was still in my name, and I made damn sure that wouldn't get a dime of it. She tried to plead, to guilt me into giving her some settlement, but I shut her down fast. I told her she had no right. She betrayed me, stole from us, and slept with her boss. She was lucky I didn't press criminal charges for the theft, but I wanted her out of my life, not to sink to her level. The most surprising thing was how she reacted afterward. Instead of disappearing quietly, she became even more vindictive. She started showing up at the house unannounced, throwing tantrums, screaming that she deserved half, that I was abusing her. and that I was cutting her off from everything. She claimed the money she took was for our family, that she was just trying to make a better life, and that I was a control freak. It was all bullshit. She'd been lying, cheating, and stealing the whole damn time. I had to hire security to keep her off the property. I filed for a restraining order after she showed up drunk and banging on the door at 2 a.m., screaming about how I wasn't going to get away with this. That was the moment I realized how far she was willing to go. She was angry, hurt, and probably humiliated, no doubt about it, but she also was dangerous. I couldn't let her keep manipulating the situation or destroying what little peace I had left. Meanwhile, I started the long process of rebuilding my life. I got a new place, left the house I'd shared with her, and began focusing on my work and mental health. I went to therapy, trying to process the betrayal. It wasn't easy. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. The trust I once had in her was shattered, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to trust again. But I knew I had to move on for my own sake. The financial damage was a blow, but I was determined to recover. I worked with a forensic accountant to track down the remaining stolen funds, and I filed a civil suit against her for the money she took. I also started looking into the legal aspects of getting her out of the house entirely. She had no claim to it anymore, but fighting her in court still took time and money. It was a stressful process, but I knew I couldn't let her keep dragging me down. In the meantime, I learned some harsh lessons about trust, loyalty, and the importance of paying attention to the warning signs. I'd always thought I was a good judge of character, but proved me wrong. I also learned that some people are just good at hiding their true selves until it's too late. The betrayal cut deep, but I refused to let it define me. I had to keep pushing forward, rebuild what I could, and protect what was left of my sanity. One thing I didn't expect was how many people reached out, friends, family, even colleagues, who had suspected something was wrong but didn't say anything. I realized I'd been so caught up in the day-to-day that I'd ignored the signs. Moving forward, I promised myself I'd be more vigilant, more cautious, and never again ignore the red flags. Trust is earned, not given blindly, and I learned that the hard way. The emotional toll was immense. I felt angry, betrayed, humiliated, and sometimes even hopeless. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity, like I was finally seeing things for what they really were. I've come to accept that sometimes people aren't who they seem, and that's a hard lesson to learn. But I also know that I am stronger than I thought, and I will survive this. I will rebuild my life piece by piece, and someday I hope to find happiness again without the lies, the betrayal, and the bullshit. Now I focus on healing, on moving past the pain. I've cut all contact with. I've blocked her number, her social media, everything. I don't want her in my life anymore. I want peace, stability, and honesty. That's what I deserve after everything. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her destroy me again. I'll fight for my happiness, even if it means starting from scratch. That's where I am now, trying to piece myself back together, knowing I've been through hell but also knowing I'm not done yet. The months that followed were the hardest I've ever faced. Every day felt like a battle to keep myself together. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the memories and the anger. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the betrayal kept creeping back into my mind. Her lies, her cheating, draining every penny we had, and then pretending to be the innocent victim. It was like a bad scar that wouldn't heal, no matter how much I wished it would. One thing I learned quickly was that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to fully repair. I had trusted for years, believed in the vows we made, and she threw all that away for some affair and a pile of stolen money. It made me realize how fragile relationships can be when lies are involved. Now I was hypervigilant, questioning everything, trying to spot any new red flags. Honestly, I was terrified of getting close to anyone again. The pain of betrayal was too raw, and I didn't want to open myself up to that kind of hurt again. On the legal side, I kept fighting to recover the stolen money. I filed a civil suit against for the $300, $0 she drained from our account. It was a long, drawn-out process, but I was determined to get it back, if not for me, then as a punishment for her reckless betrayal. The court hearings were grueling. The lawyer tried every trick in the book to delay and distract, claiming she was entitled to half the house and that I was abusing her. But I had the evidence, and I had my lawyer's relentless persistence. Meanwhile, attempts to manipulate me continued. She'd show up at the house, sometimes drunk, sometimes just angry, demanding I give her what she deserves. She'd scream, call me names, accuse me of trying to control her, even though she was the one sneaking around, draining our savings and lying straight to my face. Her behavior became more erratic, more desperate. I realized she was spiraling, and part of me felt a strange mixture of pity and disgust. She was losing control, and I was glad I was finally taking control of my life. But the emotional toll was relentless. I started seeing a therapist, trying to process everything. I told him about the betrayal, the stolen money, the house, the lies. I felt like I was carrying a heavy weight every day. Some mornings I'd wake up feeling angry, other days numb. I'd replay every conversation, every moment I missed the signs. The trust I once had for her was shattered beyond repair. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? How could I have been so blind? In those dark moments, I reminded myself that I was doing all this to protect myself and what little dignity I had left. I refused to let her take everything, my peace, my sanity, my money. I also started building a new life. I hired a new accountant to help me manage my finances better, sorted out the legal mess, and even started dating casually, something I never thought I'd do so soon after everything. But I knew I needed to rebuild my confidence and remind myself that life still had value, even after such a huge betrayal. The biggest lesson I learned was that people can surprise you in the worst ways. Trust is fragile, and you have to be careful about who you let into your life. I also learned that revenge isn't always about hurting the other person. It's about reclaiming your power. I couldn't undo what did, but I could control how I reacted and what I fought for. I refused to be a victim anymore. Every day, I pushed myself to be stronger, more cautious, and more aware. Looking back, I realize I've grown a lot through this ordeal. I've been broken, humiliated, and angry, but I've also become more resilient. I understand now that life throws curveballs, and sometimes people reveal their true selves only when it's too late. I've lost a lot, but I've gained clarity. I know I'll never let someone get that close again without scrutinizing every red flag. And I know that, one day, I'll find happiness again, alone if I have to, but on my own terms. That's the only way I'll ever truly be safe from this kind of betrayal again. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me, whether I wanted it to or not. I used to believe in forever, in loyalty, in fairy tales about happily ever after. Turns out, most of that was just fantasy. The truth is, trusting blindly is a recipe for disaster, showed me that the hard way. She was willing to destroy everything we built for some fleeting affair, some delusional idea that she deserved more. I was blinded by love and comfort, and she took advantage of that. But I also learned that even in the deepest betrayal, there's a chance for growth. I've become more cautious, more aware of the signs I once ignored. I've learned to value myself more, to put up boundaries, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. The pain was real, but so was the resilience I found buried inside. I've come to understand that sometimes you have to lose everything to truly find yourself. One of the biggest lessons I want others to take from this is that no matter how much you trust someone, you should always protect yourself, financially, emotionally, and mentally. Red flags are there for a reason. Don't ignore them because you're afraid of losing someone, because in the end, losing yourself is the worst loss of all. I also want to say that revenge isn't about hurting the other person, at least, not entirely. It's about reclaiming your power, standing up for yourself, and making sure that you're not a victim of someone else's lies and manipulations. I fought for my house, my money, my dignity, and I won. Not just in court, but in reclaiming my life. That victory, small as it might seem to some, means everything to me. I still have scars, sure. I'll probably carry the pain and anger for a long time. But I also carry hope. Hope that I will find happiness again, even if it's just on my own terms. I've realized that the most important thing is to trust myself first and foremost, to know my worth and never settle for less. Because if I've learned anything from it's that some people will betray you, sometimes for their own selfish reasons, and you have to be prepared for that. So here I am, finally ready to close this chapter. I won't forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm stronger now, more aware, and more determined than ever. Life threw a brutal lesson my way, but I survived. And I'll keep moving forward, one day at a time, knowing that I have the strength to rebuild, to heal, and to trust again, carefully, wisely, and on my own terms.